Thank you very much. I'm also very happy to be here, and I thank you very much for this opportunity to present you a little bit of the research we have been doing on personal ornaments. I have two parts in the presentation, and the first part will be about the possibility to go from prehistoric personal ornaments to regional groups, which in my case, I think they are probably ethno-linguistic groups, but this can be discussed. But I think there is regional grouping, and that this means that these were societies which may have different cultural practices in the past. Next slide, please. So, as Wolf already told you, personal ornamentation is something universal. All human societies today put on personal ornaments. And the question is, since when have they been doing this? And what we also would like to know is, why did people start to put on personal ornaments? Next slide, please. So the first, the question of why and would humans do this, except for making oneself beautiful, of course. But there are also many different reasons to put on personal ornaments. So the first thing we did is to check the ethnographic literature and also present-day practices of ornamentation to see what are the social functions of personal ornaments in human societies. So one is, as Wolf already told us, to beautify oneself, to make oneself interesting, and to have an important role in courtship, to impress the other sex. So in this society, I think it's the Turkana in Eastern Africa, men spend about 2 hours per day in decorating themselves. And they say the most beautiful women in our group are those who have the most necklaces on. So on that side. Next slide. But so this is also personal ornaments among the Zulu in Southern Africa. They also play a role in courtship. So men are putting the female, the girls are making these kind of long necklaces with different colors, and they send these to their beloved ones who are usually working in the town. And this example, I also use it to give an example of how personal ornaments function. So these are kind of messages that the girls want to transmit to their loved ones. And it was a biologist who decoded how this beadwork functions. So there are always 8 colors. So this one has only 2 colors. It was made for tourists, so it's not a real one. But the original one has 8 colors, always in the same sequence. And it's always exactly the same hue, the same detailed color. So if it's this kind of orange and not another type of orange. And they play with quantities of each color, and each color has a meaning. So I don't know all the 8 meanings of the 8 colors, but I remember that black means getting married, and red means passionate love. So on the right-hand side, that beadwork would mean something like, we absolutely have to get married, and I love you just a little bit. So because there's very few red and a lot of black color. So just to one example of how personal ornaments function. Next slide. Can function. They can also play a role in ritual and ceremonies. So these are ornaments you can only put on a specific ritual or ceremony. On the right hand, this is also ceremonial dress. And if you would encounter the same lady on an everyday day, you would not recognize her. Next slide. They can also be amulets or talismans, so to attract good things or wear off bad things. They are also social markers, so either of status or a specific individual role, such as the king or the shaman. There are specific personal ornaments which only they can wear. Next slide. Also social groups. In this case, it's women from the Turkana group again. They all wear ostrich, so the bird, the ostrich eggshell beads. For the little children, they are on strings around the waist. And if the girl grows older, she has an apron which is triangular and which will become longer and longer as she grows up. And once the girl is married, she will have a rectangular apron, also decorated with ostrich eggshell beads. So anybody who knows the code from far away can say immediately, this is a girl and she's maybe 10 years old. So maybe in a few years she will be happy to marry. And so this is also social status, social role, sorry. Next slide. But it can also be a group, a marker of group identity. These are the Crow in Northern America, and they wear the teeth of big red deer, which are called wapiti, and everybody wears it on the tunica in this way. So again, from far away, the ethnic belonging, the group belonging will be immediately understood by somebody who looks at the beadwork. Next slide. And of course, beadwork also play a role as exchange media, almost like money. The cowrie shells in colonial times are very well known. You could buy with them almost everything. Thank you very much. The next slide is then from the ethnographic literature, we could see about 14 different social roles for personal ornaments. So these are small objects which have a way of suspension and which, except for this, do not have a particular function. So it's really a social symbolic function, but it can be any one of these. And in prehistory, we of course don't know which was the first reason to put on beads, but the one which is most widespread today is really beauty and a role in courtship. Next slide, please. So from these different social functions, the next step we took was what, if we have personal ornaments in the archaeological record, what could they possibly tell us? And taking, in having in mind all these different social roles, we think that personal ornaments from archaeological layers may inform us on the origin of symbolic thinking, because these are symbolic objects. You have to know the code. You have to understand what this object means. So it's symbolic. It also can inform us about social organization, because they are maybe used for marking social groups or ethnic groups. They can be used for exchange networks, so they also can inform us about past, potentially at least past exchange networks, and probably ethnocultural units. And from this starting point with these research questions, the next step is then what methodology do we use to try to find these answers? Next slide, please. So we thought that there were two possible ways. One is if we have ethnographic beadwork for which we know this was used to mark, this was only worn by the shaman, or these were used for girls to identify these are girls and we are not another. Then we could study those and try to find diagnostic criteria on these beadworks. And once we have these diagnostic criteria, we can go back to archaeological ornaments and find maybe these criteria, and then we can say this is an individual marker, or this is a social marker, or this is ethnic marker, or this is exchange media such as money. So ethnographic beadworks, which are well documented, are difficult to find. So this was not our first approach, especially also because we are archaeologists. I was an archaeologist and not so familiar with ethnography. So the other possible methodology we followed was we look at the objects themselves and we look at which characteristics do they have, and also which are the specific contexts in which they were found. And by crossing different characteristics of the archaeological objects themselves, we think we can propose hypotheses about what functions they were used for in the past. We will never have 100% certainty, but I think we can eliminate certain hypotheses and we can propose the ones who would be most probable. So that would be my second lecture. We'll give you an example of that. Next slide, please. And then it's just archaeologists. We have many different, that's the beauty, I think, about personal ornaments. You can do many different type of analysis. You can do morphometry, you can do taphonomy, you can do technology, and also microscopic analysis. All these analyses you can do on the personal ornaments. Next slide, please. And we have many fancy tools which we borrow from other disciplines. So we can do image analysis. We can also do different types of microscopy, optical, electronic microscopy. We can do analysis to know the physical, chemical composition of personal ornaments. We can do geographical information systems, statistics. So all of this we can apply when it's useful to archaeological personal ornaments. Next slide, please. And to interpret all these data, we need, of course, reference collections. So I told you already about the ethnographic ones. For example, we know in which function they were used, but we can also use natural reference collections. For example, if we study shell beads, we can look at collections from the beach or from fossil outcrops and compare them to archaeological material to know how to interpret the characteristics of the archaeological personal ornaments. And of course, experimental archaeology is also a very famous approach. Thank you very much. Next slide. So now about a few slides just to show you how we come from the archaeological personal ornaments to ethno-linguistic or ethnocultural units. So our hypothesis, our idea was, given that personal ornaments play so many different roles, and that you have to understand the roles, every group who shares the same use of personal ornaments, the same social functions, when they lose their beads, it will give a signal. You will have a composition of particular bead types, which would characterize the group. And the group living next or far away will have different rules, will use different personal ornaments, different types, in different proportions. So their archaeological signature, if they lose their beads for, let's say, 1,000 years, will be different from a group living next door with other rules in beadwork use. So this is the Aurignacian in Europe. These are all the sites from the Aurignacian time period, so about 36 to 30,000 years ago, in which personal ornaments have been found. Next slide, please. So in total, as we know, archaeologists, they sieve or they don't sieve. So the number of beads we did not take into account because it will depend on how well a site was excavated and how big the site was. So we just take into account the presence and absence of particular bead types. So the typology was made based on raw material, if it's in bone, in ivory, in shell or teeth, and also on the size and on the shell species or genus. If it looks the same, so Nassarius beads will be one type and Glycimeris beads will be a different type. So in total, we have 116 Aurignacian sites across Europe, in which 161 different bead types have been found. So we need some statistics to get an image of this. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit difficult, but On the horizontal axis, we have the archaeological bead types, and on the vertical axis, we have the archaeological sites. And every black dot is the presence of a bead type in a particular site. So if everybody in Europe in the Aurignacian would use the same bead types, we would have dots everywhere. So every site have a specific bead type. It can appear at any place. But if there is a structure, this analysis of presence absence, when it's along the diagonal, it means there are important differences between the sites. And if we look into detail, the upper ones are located in Germany and Belgium and a little bit north of France. So this whole lot, which are identified with the letter A, it's Northern Europe. And they only have this first half of the table, bead types. So the other bead types, which are towards that side, they were never found in Northern Europe. But in the sites which are identified with the letter C, we have those other bead types, and we have not one single bead type in common. And this is the same archaeological period. It's the Aurignacian, they have the same tools. So you have identical tools in Germany and in Italy, and it's called the Aurignacian, but they have not a single bead type in common. Whereas in B, so these are sites which are located mainly in southwestern France, northern Spain, southern France, and Italy. Also, and the Rhône Valley, so not exactly Italy, but the Rhône Valley, southern France, and a little bit of Italy. So they share part of the bead types with the northern group A and part of their bead types with the southern group C. And they also have bead types which only they have. They are never found in the north or in the south. And the hypothesis we propose is that these people probably had different languages, and maybe that group A and C not talk to each other. And it's interesting to note that the Austria, for example, is in group C, and it's geographically very close to Germany. So they are geographically close, but they don't share a bead type. So there was, in our idea, there was really a cultural barrier there between these two. So any archaeologist likes to play the advocate's devil. So next slide, please. So this is just different statistical analysis to show the same. Just next slide, please. So the colleagues, if you don't believe me, which you should, because that's how science advances, they have said maybe the groupings you have, it's not ethnocultural, it's just availability of raw material. So we go back to the archaeological record and we can say, no, it cannot be explained by raw material because we have animal teeth from, for example, fox. They are found in archaeological layers from the Aurignacian in Italy, but never used as personal ornaments. So the material was available. Also, shell beads are only found on the coast, but they are used 1,000 kilometers inland. So if they wanted to use some exotic raw material, they could, and they did. Also, human teeth were used as personal ornaments. They were available to all Aurignacian, but only used in southwestern France. And then, of course, for the ivory beads, the same raw material was transformed in very different bead types, either rounded beads or bifurcated beads or elongated beads, and this does not depend on raw materials. Next slide, please.
I'm very sorry. All these images are beautiful, and now because we transferred them to the other computer, they are just a little bit of white. So we're very sorry that we cannot really see so well what we are trying to express. But there's only one way. Go ahead.
Thank you. So then another colleague says, okay, if it's not it's not raw material, okay, it's not, but they don't believe it's ethno-linguistic or ethnocultural, then you can also say maybe it's chronological. Maybe Aurignacian people came in southern Italy, went to France and go to the north, and on their way they just lost or changed their beadwork. Also, luckily for us archaeologists, we have data. And the Aurignacian, the lithic specialists, they have found this ancient Aurignacian or proto-Aurignacian. They have these two phases which are chronologically following. The proto would be older than the ancient Aurignacian. And we can show, we have sites with long stratigraphies in which we have the proto, the ancient, and they are, for example, in Italy, you have proto-Aurignacian and ancient Aurignacian, and they have exactly the same bead types. And the same is true in the north and in the group B. When we have an Aurignacian site, it can be proto or ancient Aurignacian, they have the same bead types, and it does not change according to time. Next slide, please. So we believe, still believe, the most probable hypothesis is that these are ethnocultural groups. And the next step we would like to do, and we were happy that that was the time I met Wolf, because in New Guinea, this was an area where Western academics came rather late, and we have very good documentation of the ethnography there, and we have many ethno-linguistic groups, and we hope that our database of the personal ornaments of these different ethno-linguistic groups will be soon finished, and that we can apply exactly the same methodology as to the archaeological beads to check if we have the same picture or not. So these are, for example, different ethno-linguistic groups. And the next slide. This is one first analysis done by other archaeologists. We have bead types from 3 different ethno-linguistic groups in New Guinea. So it's a little bit flipped compared to what we did with the Aurignacian. On top, you have in red one group, in the middle there's another group, and in blue is a third group. And on the vertical axis, you have bead types. So here again, you see the blue group has personal ornaments which only he uses. The neighboring group does not use it. But he shares part of his bead types with the neighboring group. So there is contact, there is exchange. And there's a third group, the red one, who has bead types which only he uses. He shares part of it with the neighbor, which is in between apparently. And the neighbor in between also has his own bead types, but shares every time bead types with the neighboring group, but not all of it. So it looks like it's the same picture, but it has to be, of course, a bigger database and a good justification of the bead types and so forth. Next slide, please. So this is still something which we are working on. So that was the first part of my presentation. Thank you very much.